The night receptionist barely looked up when the old man stepped to the counter. He slid an ID card across the polished marble surface and waited quietly. She sighed, pulled it toward her, and began typing without even making eye contact. To her, he was just another late Nightwa, tired, slow, and probably unable to afford a room in a hotel like this. Then she read the name. Her fingers froze above the keyboard. For a second, she thought she misread it. She lifted the card closer to the light, checked the photo, then slowly raised her eyes toward the man standing in front of her. He looked exactly the same as before. Worn sneakers, simple clothes, a small travel bag resting beside his leg. But now her expression had completely changed. The impatience was gone. So was the attitude, because the person she had just dismissed was someone she had grown up hearing on the radio, and the words she'd said only minutes earlier were now echoing in her head. Impossible to take back. The lobby suddenly felt very quiet. She straightened her posture, her voice softer now, almost careful. "Sir, is this really you?" The man gave a small, tired smile, not offended, not proud, just calm. He had seen this reaction many times before. What he hadn't expected was how differently he had been treated before she knew his name. But what bothered him wasn't the mistake. It was that nothing about him had changed in the last 30 seconds, except what she believed about him. And that moment at the front desk would end up changing the way she treated people for the rest of her life. To understand why, we have to go back 1 hour earlier, to when the doors first opened, and she decided within a few seconds exactly who she thought he was. The hotel was quiet for a late Friday night in Los Angeles, but not too quiet. Upscale travelers still arrived, staff scurried to check them in, and the faint hum of the city seeped through the glass doors. This was one of those boutique hotels where celebrities sometimes stayed, and where the front desk had learned to spot VIP from the moment they stepped inside. Every gesture, every movement, every glance, it was all information. At the front desk was a receptionist who had worked this long shift almost every Friday for months. She was tired, mentally exhausted. She dealt with late arrivals, demanding influencers, impatient business travelers, and one particularly rude family who had complained about everything from the towels to the water pressure. She prided herself on her ability to read people instantly, to know who mattered and who didn't. To her, experience was everything, and first impressions were permanent. Tonight, she believed she could recognize anyone important immediately. Important people always looked a certain way: polished shoes, designer jackets, confident posture, and a sense of urgency. Anyone else, she assumed, could wait, could get the small room, could deal with a little attitude if it meant keeping the hotel running smoothly. That belief, subtle, unconscious, and unexamined, would soon set the stage for a lesson she would never forget. The lobby was polished and quiet, the soft lighting reflecting off the marble floors. A few guests lingered at tables, sipping drinks, checking phones. The desk was organized, computers humming softly, keycards ready, forms printed neatly in stacks. She moved efficiently, typing, glancing at screens, occasionally offering a polite smile to the guests who had arrived before the old man walked in. Everything seemed normal, orderly, predictable. She didn't notice him yet. He stepped inside. A man in his 70s, slightly hunched, moving carefully as if every step required effort. His shoes were worn, his jeans faded, his t-shirt simple and slightly rumpled. A small travel bag rested beside his leg. His hair was thinning, a little unkempt, and his hands shook slightly. But his movements were deliberate, patient, polite. He didn't rush. He didn't complain. He didn't demand attention. To her, he looked exactly like what she had subconsciously decided he would. A late-night guest, probably here for the cheapest room. Probably not someone who would tip well. Probably not someone who belonged in a hotel like this. She barely noticed him at first, her attention focused on the next computer screen, the next guest, the next task. But even as he waited politely at the counter, the contrast between him and the people she had treated with warmth moments before the well-dressed couples, the confident business travelers, was striking. He didn't have the posture of someone who was important, He didn't carry the air of someone used to respect or luxury. He was quiet, unassuming, almost invisible. And that's exactly why, within the first few seconds, she had already made a judgment. Not consciously, but in every way that mattered. The tone she chose when she finally looked at him, the way she gestured toward the forms on the counter, the slight delay in helping him. She believed she knew exactly who he was, or rather, who she thought he was. That belief would be shattered in a moment. But for now, everything seemed normal. The hotel was calm, the lobby quiet, the computers humming, the city outside unaware that a small interaction at the front desk would soon teach a lesson that no amount of experience could have prepared her for. It all began with the man stepping closer to the counter, reaching into his bag and politely saying, "Good evening. I'd like a room, please."
Sorry, but this isn't what I ordered.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll get that fixed for you right away.
The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and the man stepped fully into the lobby. He moved slowly, deliberately, taking care with each step. The receptionist glanced up, barely noticing him at first. He didn't rush, didn't demand attention, didn't carry an air of importance, just a simple, unassuming man with a small travel bag at his side. He approached the front desk politely. "Good evening," he said softly. His voice was calm, measured, and carried a subtle accent that suggested he wasn't a local. "I'd like a room, please." The receptionist's eyes flicked toward him. She took in his worn sneakers, his faded jeans, the slightly wrinkled t-shirt, the way his shoulders slumped just a little. Her mind immediately made a judgment. This man probably couldn't afford much, and this is going to be a hassle. She sighed quietly and tapped the keyboard, glancing back at him as if to signal, "Hold on, I'll get to you when I can." He waited patiently, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. No complaint, no impatience. Behind him, a well-dressed couple walked in, laughing softly and carrying designer bags. Her tone instantly shifted, friendly, warm, professional. She smiled at them, engaged in small talk, offered them immediate options. She treated them like VIP. The older man remained at the counter. He didn't interrupt. He didn't protest. He just waited, polite, calm, quietly hoping to be noticed. Finally, she looked back at him fully, her expression neutral. "Are you sure you want a room tonight?" she asked, not harshly, but with a subtle undertone, almost questioning if he belonged there. "Our rooms are almost full." He nodded, hands resting lightly on the counter. "Yes, please, just a standard room will do," he said softly. No complaint, no attitude. Even in those few seconds, the contrast between him and the couple behind him was clear. One judged immediately, the other simply existed quietly, respectfully, and with patience. The receptionist pulled up the computer screen, typed briefly, and kept glancing at him. He didn't fidget. He didn't rush her. And for a moment, it seemed like nothing would happen, just a late night check-in. But in truth, she had already set the stage for the moment that would change everything. In her mind, he was just another ordinary guest. She had no idea who he really was. And that misunderstanding, that assumption, would be revealed in just a few minutes, in a way she would never forget. She finally looked at him fully, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Something about his quiet demeanor, the way he moved slowly, and his simple clothing immediately triggered a judgment she didn't even notice she was making. "Sir," she said politely, but her tone carried a subtle edge, a hint of disbelief. "Our rooms tonight, they're almost fully booked." She hesitated, then added, "I can offer you the smallest room we have. It's on the 3rd floor. Nothing fancy." He nodded calmly. "That's fine," he said softly. His accent made every word deliberate. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't arguing. Just polite. Behind him, the couple she had smiled at earlier were now waiting for her attention. She turned quickly, greeting them warmly, joking lightly, offering the best suite and complimentary services. Her voice was cheerful, her tone animated, but for the older man, brief, clipped words, minimal warmth, minimal acknowledgement. The difference was striking. She didn't notice it consciously, but the camera and the viewer could see it clearly. He shifted slightly, politely, still smiling faintly, as if to show he didn't mind, and that patience only made the tension grow for the audience. "You understand our rooms are expensive," she said, tapping keys slowly as if warning him. "Even this small room is $450 a night." She let her words linger. $450, a subtle reminder that she assumed he might not be able to afford it. He smiled faintly. "I understand," he said. "I just need a place to rest tonight." Her eyes narrowed slightly, though she tried to hide it. She glanced at the small bag beside him. No fancy luggage, nothing to suggest wealth, nothing to suggest he was more than he appeared. The couple behind him finally finished speaking, and she turned back fully to him. Her tone softened a fraction, only slightly, enough to sound professional, but still, there was the unspoken judgment. "You don't belong here, do you?" He handed over a few details for the check-in. She typed them in slowly, without eye contact, her voice polite but distant. Every small action reminded the audience. She had already decided who he was a guest, yes, but one she assumed could be overlooked, undervalued, dismissed. He noticed her impatience, the subtle difference in treatment, and still he said nothing. Polite, calm, patient, but the tension for the viewer grew. It was uncomfortable, and everyone watching knew that a huge revelation was coming. That moment, a receptionist judging a man based on clothes, age, and appearance, planted the seed for shock and suspense. It was subtle but biting. The audience could feel the injustice, and the anticipation built naturally. What happens when she finally reads his ID? Her final words before asking for the ID cut through the tension like a blade. "May I see some identification, please?" He reached into his bag, hands steady despite the tremor in them. The receptionist leaned over, glancing down, and in that pause, time seemed to slow. The audience knew. This was the moment everything would change.
Here you go.
Thank you, and here's your key.
Thanks a lot.
Enjoy your
He
stay.
reached slowly into his small travel bag, pulling out a worn wallet. His hands trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from age. Every motion was deliberate, careful, nothing rushed. The receptionist leaned forward, still half, looking at the screen, her fingers poised over the keyboard. She wasn't paying full attention, but her eyes flicked toward him. She thought she had this figured out. A quiet, ordinary guest, likely here for the cheapest room. He produced his ID, a simple plastic card with his photo and name. He placed it on the counter gently, sliding it toward her. She picked it up casually at first, still typing with one hand, still half distracted. Then she read the name. Her fingers froze above the keys. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. She glanced down at the ID again, then back at the man. Something didn't make sense. Slowly, she lifted it closer to the light, checked the photo, compared it to his worn, simple appearance. She looked back at him, then down at the card again. Her breathing changed, almost imperceptibly at first, then a little sharper. Her posture stiffened. The polite, distant receptionist she had been a moment ago had vanished. Now, every instinct in her screamed that something enormous had just happened. The lobby felt quieter somehow. The hum of the AC, the soft footsteps of late guests, even the blinking lights of the computers all seemed to fade away. For a brief moment, it was just her, the ID, and the man standing silently in front of her. She checked the photo again. She compared it to the man's face, the slightly unsteady walk, the quiet calm. Nothing about his appearance matched what she expected. Nothing except that subtle confidence in his eyes. Her hand shook slightly as she held the card. The audience knows what she hasn't said yet. They feel it building. The tension, the shock, the realization that this ordinary-looking guest is someone extraordinary. She finally whispered almost to herself, Is this really you?" The man smiled faintly, calm, unassuming, patient, not proud, not offended, just aware that she had finally begun to understand. And that single, quiet reaction, his smile, his calm presence, made the audience hold their breath. Everything they had assumed about him, based on clothes, age, and demeanor, was about to be overturned. Her eyes darted from the ID to the man standing before her, disbelief written across her face. She leaned closer, as if seeing him clearly would make sense of the impossible. "Wait, this can't be," she whispered, almost to herself. The letters on the card, the names she had only ever read in magazines, heard on the radio, seen on concert posters, confirmed it. Every instinct she had about who he was had been wrong. The man in front of her remained calm. He didn't gloat, didn't demand acknowledgement, just a quiet, faint smile, as if he had anticipated this reaction hundreds of times before in his life. The receptionist's hands trembled slightly as she held the ID. "Is this really you?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man nodded softly, almost embarrassed by the attention. "Yes," he said, calm, patient, unassuming. And in that instant, the lobby felt different. The world she had created in her mind, the assumptions, the judgments, collapsed. The man she had dismissed as ordinary, as someone unimportant, as someone who couldn't possibly belong in this hotel, was Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, one of the most famous rock musicians on the planet. Her jaw dropped. She couldn't speak. The keyboard sat untouched beneath her fingers. The polished marble counter suddenly felt impossibly small, the lobby impossibly quiet. She realized in a single moment that everything she thought she knew about this man, about judging people by their appearance, had been completely wrong. The camera would linger on her stunned face, then pan to his calm, knowing smile. No anger, no ego, just presence, and the audience could feel it. She had misjudged someone extraordinary, and he hadn't even asked to be treated specially. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Then the reality sank in. Her assumptions, her behavior, her impatience, all of it, had been completely unfair. And the man in front of her had just flipped the script. The receptionist's hands dropped to the counter. She stared at him, trying to reconcile the man before her with the legendary musician she had admired from afar, the voice, the music, the persona she had seen on stage, now reduced to this quiet, polite figure in worn sneakers and a simple t-shirt. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't realize, I never expected." Words failed her. She felt the weight of every judgment she had made just moments ago. Her eyes searched his face, hoping for a sign that he was angry, but all she saw was calm patience. The lobby felt impossibly quiet. The soft hum of the AC, the distant sounds of the city, all of it faded into the background. Every guest, every polished floor, every keycard at the counter seemed insignificant compared to this moment. I am so sorry," she finally managed, voice shaking. "I judged you, I treated you differently because of how you looked. I assumed things I had no right to assume." He gave a faint, understanding smile, not judgmental, not condescending, just calm. "It's all right," he said quietly. "Most people don't recognize me right away. That's fine." She swallowed hard, feeling both relief and shame at the same time. "No, it's more than that. I treated you unfairly. I assumed you couldn't afford the hotel. I didn't treat you with respect." He nodded slowly, eyes steady. "That's the part that matters," he said, "not the recognition, not the fame. Respect should come first, before you know who someone is, before you know their story." Her posture straightened slightly, though her voice still shook. I can't believe I just treated you like you didn't belong here. She trailed off, realizing the enormity of her mistake. He didn't respond with anger or ridicule. Instead, he let her words settle, calmly allowing the weight of her own actions to sink in. And in that silence, the receptionist finally understood. Fame wasn't what made him extraordinary. His humility, his patience, and the way he carried himself, even after decades of superstardom, were the true measure of the man she had almost dismissed. The camera lingers on the ID in her hand, the name, the photo, the moment when she realized that what she had assumed about him was entirely wrong. And now, fully aware of her error, she quietly murmured, "I am so sorry." I should have treated you the same way I treat every guest. He nodded once softly. That's all anyone can ask for. He leaned back slightly, keeping his voice calm but firm. Listen, he said, his Birmingham accent soft but carrying weight. It's not about you not recognizing me. Most people don't. That's fine. What matters is how you treated me before you even looked at the ID. The receptionist's face flushed. I didn't mean, I just assumed. He shook his head gently. No, that's exactly the problem. You assumed I wasn't worthy of respect because of how I looked, because I didn't wear expensive clothes, because I moved slowly, because I didn't fit the image you expected of someone important. Her eyes widened. I see that now. He continued, voice steady, calm, but carrying the weight of decades of experience. This isn't just about me. How many other people do you treat the same way? Musicians, travelers, anyone who doesn't look like they belong. The world is full of people with talent, heart, and stories you'll never know if you judge them before you see them. The receptionist's hands gripped the counter. Her voice shook. I never thought about it that way. I made a mistake. He leaned forward slightly, eyes kind but piercing. It's not just a mistake. It's a lesson. Every person deserves basic respect, before their name, before their fame, before anything else. That's the only standard that matters. She nodded slowly, swallowing hard. You're right, I treated you unfairly. I'll do better. He smiled faintly, patient. Good, that's all I'm asking. You don't have to worship me. You just need to remember that respect isn't earned by how someone looks. It's something you give to everyone, until they prove otherwise. For a moment, silence filled the lobby. The receptionist let the words sink in. Every assumption, every judgment she had made, suddenly felt small, petty, and wrong. And in that silence, the lesson landed hard, clear, unforgettable. The camera would linger on their faces, her humbled and reflective, him calm and patient. The tension that had built over minutes, the misjudgment, the assumptions, the impatience was resolved, not with anger, but with understanding. This was the confrontation, not with shouting, not with blame, but with a clear, simple truth. Everyone deserves respect. No exceptions. The next morning, the lobby was calm again. The receptionist arrived early, still thinking about the night before. She moved through her routine automatically, checking computers, straightening the desk, organizing keycards, but her mind wasn't on tasks. It was on the lesson Ozzy had delivered. He appeared quietly at the front desk, suitcase in hand, not demanding attention, not flaunting fame, just a man who had come to rest just like any other guest. Instead of asking for upgrades or special treatment, he smiled politely and said, "Morning. Just checking out today." She offered the usual pleasantries, remembering every word he had said. Her voice was warm, genuine, the respect in it unmistakable. He nodded, returning the smile. Then, quietly, he handed the housekeeper a generous tip, a gesture simple but powerful. No fanfare, no ego, no announcement, just kindness in action. The receptionist watched him go, realizing that respect and humility didn't need drama. They were shown through behavior, not titles or wealth. Even from across the lobby, the lesson was clear. Appearances don't define a person, but the choices they make and the respect they give or receive reveal who they truly are. The next day, a delivery driver arrived, early and unassuming. Jeans, hoodie, worn sneakers, someone who could easily be overlooked. The receptionist straightened, remembering Ozzy's words. She greeted him with the same warmth she would give any guest. "Good morning. Thanks for coming so early. We really appreciate it," she said genuinely. The driver blinked, surprised by the sudden kindness. She offered him a bottle of water, helped him find the elevator, and thanked him for his work with real attention. As he left, she realized the change was already happening inside her. She was no longer judging, no longer assuming. Respect was no longer conditional on appearance, title, or fame. It was automatic, and in that small, ordinary interaction, she felt the weight of what she had learned from the man at the front desk. Everyone deserves dignity simply for being human. She watched the lobby, now quiet, and smiled softly to herself. The lesson Ozzy had quietly delivered lingered. Kindness and respect aren't earned by fame or appearance, they're given freely to everyone. From that moment on, every guest, every visitor, every person who walked through the doors would be met with the same warmth, the same dignity. And for her, that small shift would change not just her day, but the way she saw the world forever.